This is the Dynasty Market Report, where we look at a specific asset in Dynasty Fantasy Football, be it a pick or a player, and we look at how is the market moving around this? How are they trading this player? How are they trading this pick? Because one of the best ways to make your fantasy team better in the offseason is by playing the trade market and playing market sentiment. Everyone understands buy low, sell high, but what is low? What is high? How do you know if you're getting full value when you're trading a player away? Well, today we're going to look at that and figure it out for Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers, just wrapping up an excellent rookie season going into his second year. As of this recording, it is Friday morning. The NFL honors were last night where Tet won Rookie of the Year. And I think it makes sense. He had some really solid stats: 122 targets, 70 receptions, 1,014 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And I expect those to get better in year 2. Now, that might not be for the reason you think. With a lot of rookies, they get better in year 2 because they weren't fully used at the start of year 1. And that's not the case with Tet. One of the things that I'm looking for with rookie players, especially wide receivers, is when are they getting on the field and when are they getting targets? And immediately from week 1, Tetairoa McMillan was on the field for the vast majority of the snaps, and he was earning targets. In week 1, he had 9 targets. In week 2 of 2025, he had 10 targets. Right from the jump, he was ready to go. You could think of other players like RJ Harvey, who did not perform until J.K. Dobbins missed time. Even great wide receivers like Justin Jefferson in his rookie year, those first couple weeks were a slow ramp up. You're getting ramped up to the NFL speed. Even great wide receivers take a while. It used to be that not very many rookie receivers did very much in their first year. Justin Jefferson was kind of a surprise. Tet McMillan from week 1, out there and ready to go. And if we look at market sentiment, I think it kind of shows that like people are in on this guy. Let's pull this up. So the market value of Tet McMillan has not changed much throughout the 6 months since the season. At the start of the season, people saw, oh, he's out. Like, we expect him to be good, and he's out there and good. And then it's just kind of stayed up. He's wide receiver 9 right now on Keep Trade Cut. If we look at the rankings around him, I would comfortably have Tet McMillan ahead of someone like George Pickens, in the same tier or slightly ahead of Nico Collins. Similar conversation with Emeka Egbuka. It wouldn't surprise me if Egbuka had a better career, but we're picking at nits here and finding small differences, saying wide receiver 9 in one tier versus wide receiver 12 in a very similar tier. Not a big change. So if we're looking for down tiers, I don't see a lot. I feel like we have a good value on Tet McMillan. I don't know that we need to get out based on value that isn't going to lead to production. Would I be excited to move from Tet McMillan to Ladd? I mean, I probably would need a lot to move down to someone like that, because I think the player is that good and that the market's a little bit low on them. If we're looking to do an up tier, I saw Malik Neighbors as a good option to get into a player going into their 3rd year in the league, but really their 2nd year playing in a better offensive situation with different head coaching coming in for the Giants. And I did pull up some real trades that have happened, and I put them into Keep Trade Cut to just gauge a value of it. So someone sent Tet McMillan and Michael Penix. This is a real deal that went through, and they came away with Malik Neighbors. And if I'm looking to move off of Tet in an up tier to a different wide receiver, I like a deal like this. Now, this is one that actually happened, but you could swap in Xavier Worthy. You could swap in DK Metcalf, who's going to have a similar value. You could swap in JJ McCarthy. These are all just kind of, what does the other side of the trade want? Or what players do you have available to you? So does the Malik Neighbors owner want McCarthy, who could be the starter, or do they prefer Penix, or do they just want a veteran wide receiver like DK Metcalf that we brought up? Any of those deals I would be fine with making, just for if we're looking for strictly for an up tier at wide receiver. I like both of these guys. I do like Malik Neighbors more, and I think you're getting a bit of a value discount because the market hasn't fully rebounded to him coming back and performing in a new offense and seeing him with Jackson Dart and the way that things could be for the Giants this year. Now, if we pull up some other real trades that have gone through, I've limited this to trades within this scoring range. 12 teams, start 10. And then I look at about no more than 6 assets in a trade for these videos so that we can try to more so isolate what is Tet. worth? Because if it's a trade sending 4 players for 5 players, it's hard to pick out the value of one guy. But here, as a great example, would I trade away Tet McMillan for the 106 and the 201? And that feels like a comfortable no from me. You would be taking a receiver that we drafted in the first round of rookie drafts and re-rolling and then getting a 201 on top that maybe you could move for another asset. But the way that the draft is looking right now, once we start to get into that 106, 107, 108 range, there's a lot of question marks. Now, I'm someone who believes we don't know who's going to be great and who's going to be good. And at this point in the year, I don't really gauge the value of the 106 as low as everyone else. But part of the reason we make these videos is because what I think doesn't matter. If I can't trade the 106 at full price because everyone else in my league thinks there's only 5 good guys in this draft, or with any number, if there were 7 players that people thought were good, I don't want the 108 because I can't trade it. And right now, I expect that it would be harder to trade the 106 compared to the value that it will provide you. So I don't really feel like we're adding great liquidity moving off of Tet McMillan here. I think the 106 and the 201 are going to be pretty hard to move until April. And that's different from other years. Would I make a deal like this if I have JSN to acquire Tet McMillan and get the 104 and 106? I know I just said a lot about not really wanting the 106, but in this spot, I could see myself doing it. If I have a team that has one good young asset, JSN, and not much else, I am getting enough here in real value with Tet McMillan, the player that I get at the 104, and then I'm getting enough liquidity here that I can hold the 106 and then make moves with the 104, make moves with Tet McMillan to clean up the rest of my roster. I would be okay moving from JSN for this package. It's not for every team, but there are definitely spots where if JSN's not enough to get me a championship and I don't have a lot of picks going forward, I'm okay with moving a young guy to kick that rebuild going a little bit faster. Here's another example of the trade that we just covered, Malik Neighbors for Penix and Tet. We went a little more in depth on that one. And if you can get a trade like this, RJ Harvey, Isaac Tisla, the 211, and you can get Tet McMillan in that, you're the king of fantasy. You're the #1 trade king because this is the Keep Trade Cut Classic, the KTC special. You take a bunch of stuff that on Keep Trade Cut value adds up to be more than Tet McMillan. And someone sees that and says, this is great. I love this. I'm getting so much value. I'm losing the best player, but I'm getting so much value. And it just doesn't work that way. If I could move these 3 pieces and get Tet McMillan, I don't care what a trade calculator says, I would be doing that trade. Because you're getting the better player. Isaac Tisla, like we're excited about what he could be, but we don't know. He could easily stay what he was, which was very rarely used. Some games he would get a touchdown, but most of the time he's getting on the field around 30% of snaps and maybe 2 to 3 targets. And then the 211 is, I don't know how many players in rookie drafts that were taken at the 211 ever really become anything in Dynasty Fantasy Football. We just get deep enough into drafts that these players are extreme lotto tickets. So if I have something that's hit with Tet, I don't want the 211. And then RJ Harvey is about 1,000 years old. We've covered RJ Harvey in other videos. You can check those out. I do believe he has a role on Dynasty rosters. It's just not, he's going into his second year, but he's not youthful. You don't have a ton of years left before the market value is going to start coming off because of his age. So I would just stay with Tet in a trade like that. Here's another one, Tet McMillan and a 27 second for Tyler Shuck and Garrett Wilson. If your team needs a quarterback, I like this swap. Moving from Tet to Garrett Wilson, if Garrett Wilson is healthy with a decent quarterback, which we shouldn't have to say that it's unlikely, he could end up with not having another good quarterback. But in a situation where he had, a Geno Smith in the past couple years as an example, even Tyler Shuck has become a decent quarterback out of the second round. If the Jets can get anything decent, then Garrett Wilson can easily produce in the same way as Tet McMillan. You're losing a couple years, but then you're trading a 27 second to get a quarterback who's probably starting. I could see that swap if you're desperate for quarterback and you want to move a second round pick in the future to kind of make that happen. I wouldn't hate a deal like that. It's probably not one that I'm building myself to go get, but I don't think it's an unfair deal. Here's another one, Ted McMillan for Anthony Richardson and the 102. I might just stay with Ted. There's definitely upside here. And if I'm a rebuilding team and I got Ted McMillan, but it's not going to be enough to get me over the edge, would I cash out for the 102, where I can probably get the consensus best wide receiver in this draft, which isn't always accurate, and then Anthony Richardson, who could be a starter again? I think if I'm doing this, I don't know that Anthony Richardson is the player I want, and I don't know that this is the move I would make to get a 26 first round pick, an early one. I think if I have Ted McMillan, even if I'm rebuilding, the opportunity cost of making this trade, meaning I couldn't make a different and better trade, is going to be where I hold the line. Here's a trade that will cover Ted McMillan or Rome Odunze. I'm going to stay on the Ted McMillan side. And if you're seeing a trade like this and thinking on either side of this, well, that's crazy. Of course I want that guy. That's crazy. Of course I want Rome Odunze. That's crazy. Of course I want Ted McMillan. There are managers who think that. If you're not thinking that way, you have to keep it in the back of your mind that there are managers who will think that way. One for one, they just like their guy more. And it's not a question. And if you can find deals like this, where you're sending Rome Odunze and getting Tet, I think we want to be making those. We're not for sure, we don't know for sure that it's going to be correct, but if you're doing trades like that enough, over the long term, the market is usually pretty correct. So even if this trade ends up being wrong and Rome is better than Tet, enough of the time, if we make these trades enough times, we'll come out ahead. Here's the final one we're going to look at. Two rookies. Actually, we're going to look at two more because I see this one below. Two rookies from last year, Tet McMillan or Judkins, and a third. I think I'm just going to stay with Tet. I do really like Quinshon Judkins. We've covered him in a video, but I would rather have Tet McMillan, and the 303 doesn't make a big enough difference for me. And then the final trade that will cover Tet or Tucker Kraft in a 0.75 tight end premium. That's really where it's going to push it over the edge. If you're playing in these heavier tight end premiums, then I'll take Tucker Kraft. The Packers are staying with their head coach, Matt LaFleur. They've been using Tucker Kraft really as one of the lead receiving options in this team. Packers drafted Matthew Golden last year, but I don't know that he's shown that he's going to take the next step forward. And some of these wide receivers that they've had that have been getting the team by, Romeo Doubs, are facing free agency. And Tucker Kraft should be there and be one of the lead receiving options. I think this one starts to look fair, specifically because of the tight end premium. So that's going to bring us to the end here on Tetairoa McMillan. If there is a specific player that you want to see covered in one of these, let me know in the comments. Sometimes we take those comments and we turn them into the short form videos that we post on YouTube and on TikTok, and sometimes we'll bring them in on the long form videos here. We're building out the schedule for the videos that will come out next week. So if there's someone you want to see, let me know in the comments in the next day or two. If you've made it this far to the end, thank you very much, and we will see you in the next one.